Hello, everyone. It's Jason Ilster, president of Downtown Madison, Inc., and we're here with another Advocacy Update series, which provides our members in the greater community opportunity to learn about DMI's advocacy work, initiatives, and priorities, and get deep dive into some of the most pressing issues here in downtown. For this series, we are so excited to have our good friend and my boss, DMI board member Karla, who's the executive director of Porchlight, to talk about Porchlight, all the great work that's happening. What does Porchlight do? All of their different Porchlight products and Safe Haven and all the different work they're in. But we're also going to talk about homelessness in general in our community and what's happening with the purpose-built shelter here in Madison. So we're excited to discuss with Karla everything that's happening here in our community. She's one of the great leaders, and I know you're going to be very interested to hear more from her. We would not be here, though, if it wasn't for our sponsors, our major series sponsor, Sinair. We've got Chris Gillings, Senior Vice President of Business Development here, but we've also got two other sponsors, the Fiore Company, our supporting series sponsor, and Hush Blackwell. So a huge thanks to Sinair, the Fiore Companies, and Hush Blackwell. And we're going to hear first from our good friend, Chris Gillings, again, the Senior Vice President of Business Development with Sinair. How's it going, Chris? How are you today?
Good, Jason. How are you doing?
We're doing all right. We're doing all right. How's everything at Sinair?
Good. Busy as usual. Anytime you've got upset in the world economically, otherwise it always becomes an interesting time to be going about work. But we continue at what we do every day, which is trying to support those in health communities.
And tell us a little bit more about Sinair. Sinair is a great company doing amazing housing projects throughout the United States. What's happening here with Sinair in Madison?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So again, we're, as an extension of the work we've done for years with DMI, we're proud to be a part of this series on the Advocacy Update. For us at Sinair, we are guided perennially by our why statement, which is that we exist because we believe that everybody enjoys, or everyone is entitled to enjoy, the benefits that come from living in a healthy community. And then we invest in the places and the people that make those things happen. So for us at Sinair, we continue our work on community development projects, including new markets tax credits. My primary role and the lion's share of my time is investing in affordable housing projects. I cover our Wisconsin and Minnesota geographies. But we continue to crest on a number of record years in spite of the fact that the economic uncertainty makes for uncertain investment times for everybody. And LIHTC, unfortunately, and other community development projects are not insulated from that sort of risk. So we continue to try to advocate where we can. For me personally, I was really excited to see the topic for this month's series and to see Karla on here. As Porchlight has been a long stalwart in supporting the mission of of supporting the homeless, helping to surround them with the sorts of things that they need to lift themselves out of either chronic or acute homeless conditions, and elevate them back to a point of dignity, self-sustainability, and to provide them with the resources that they need to make sure that they can break that cycle and contribute back to our communities. It's one of the most important safety nets that exist in any kind of healthy community. And we're so grateful here in Madison to have Porchlight as the longtime champion of this cause. As many are aware, even here in Madison, the plight of the homeless is even being more challenged as the conditions of the pandemic have really put a lot of strain on projects that have been established to serve those communities. And that makes the role of groups like Porchlight that not only have a deep history, but a deep-rooted place in the fabric of the community, so critical to make sure that we're serving those that are most in need and living our mission and our collective mission, we believe, in creating healthy communities. So, Karla, on behalf of Sinair, we're grateful for the work that you do, and I'm very pleased to hear, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what's going on at Porchlight today.
Well, Chris, here. Better words have not been said about the great work that Porchlight does, but I also send it right back to Sinair and the great work that you're doing. You guys are all a part of, what our housing solutions look like here in Madison. So thank you, Chris, for your support of our new advocacy update and many years of support for our Nosh at Noon event. So Chris, thank you. We really do appreciate it. Before we get to Karla, we're going to begin with a DMI advocacy update, things that are happening here at DMI this summer. We've got a lot of different projects that we're working on. I want to give you all an update about what's happening from our side of things. An area that we're spending a lot of time on is land use here in downtown. There's some big conversations about large parcels of land, and including the Brayton lot, a city-owned parking lot, surface parking lot bounded by Butler, East Main, Washington, and Franklin. And this is a site right now that is being used for bus rapid transit construction. But the city is very interested in making sure that there's life in that block post the BRT construction, and we'll be putting out an RFP later this year for potentially multiple uses on this large block. So we're actively watching what's happening there and working with the city to make sure we create the best RFP possible for this really important piece of land. Speaking of, just kitty corner from the Brayton lot are the Jeff buildings, Jeff 1, Jeff 2, and Jeff 3. And the state of Wisconsin in their Vision 2030 report discussed about how they would like to disinvest from these buildings, Jeff 2 and Jeff 3. They'll reinvest in Jeff 1 and move employees there. But in Jeff 2 and Jeff 3, and those are the buildings bounded by King Street and Butler, Webster, and East Main, they will be doing an RFP sometime in the next 5 years to sell that land for potential new use as well. So we're seeing a significant amount of new usages potentially on the east side of downtown, where we're already seeing a lot of activity. King Street couldn't be hotter than ever. The whole area has fully leased. You're seeing a lot of construction off of and around Wilson Street and Doty Street right now today. And this new opportunities could really help reshape what downtown looks like. Obviously, we are concerned by the loss of some state office employees. That is a concern here in downtown, but we do think overall this is beneficial to be able to really remake what that land looks like and bring some more vibrancy and more projects with housing and affordable housing and childcare and potentially lab space, different things that could happen that could all help that section of downtown and create a strong economic situation. Another big topic is the 4 through 600 blocks of State Street. With the city's Metro Transit network redesign, the buses were moved just a few weeks ago from the 4 through 600 blocks of State Street. And currently the Downtown Coordinating Committee and the City Council is looking at a potential pilot project to temporarily close the street to traffic. Of course, EMS and fire, life, and safety and deliveries will have to be figured in. But right now, the council members, led by Alder Bennett, are understanding what a pilot project could do to test out what a new 4, 5, and 600 block could be. We're very interested in following this closely, but we're even more interested in what the long-term view of that street could be. And could we create some sort of pedestrian mall in that space? Again, there always is going to be a need for emergency services and deliveries, but I think we can work through those. And we really want to see what could happen maybe by the end of this decade or early next decade for the 4 through 600 blocks of State Street. It's a very interesting time on State Street, and we're very excited for that to happen. Also, an area that's growing significantly is Regent Street. And we talked about this at our last advocacy update with Rob Gottschalk from Vanderwall and Associates. Work continues aplenty on Regent Street, and there's multiple tower cranes and multiple construction projects, including potentially some new construction projects with our good friends at Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corporation, WHPC, and a site on the Jensen lot. We're seeing a few amenities on retail side as well, and potentially some other large projects. We met with the city of Madison and Matt Miklajewski to hear about the city's plan for TID 50, Tax Increment District 50, and what their project plan is. And a group of led by DMI of public-private partners had some potential amendments for some more amenities that could be created with all of this influx of housing happening in and around Regent Street. So it's a very interesting space that we are watching very closely. Big project for downtown. I'm sure most of you heard that Sasaki was chosen as the lead designer for the new plan for the Lake Monona waterfront. Again, this is a 1.7-mile expanse running from Machinery Row all the way to Olin Park. And Sasaki has started in earnest on their redesign of this space. And it's going to be a multi-phase, multi-year project, but phase 1 certainly is going to be in and around the John Nolan Causeway, which is up for reconstruction in years 25 and 26. The mayor's office in the city of Madison was able to garner $15 extra million for that project to help really set up a larger pedestrian and bike infrastructure so that we really can all enjoy that part of the Lake Monona waterfront. It's a very exciting project. And if you're interested at all, please send us a note, because we are part of the Friends of Nolan Waterfront, the private side of that public-private partnership. Speaking of homelessness issues, which we're going to get to with Karla and our friend just in a minute here, DMI always hosts our homeless committee meeting with our friends from Catholic Charities, where all the different entities and public-private side get together to discuss what's going on. And DMI is so thankful to be able to do that quarterly. If you're interested in joining those meetings, please let me know. Our Beyond Compliance team, as part of our inclusiveness committee, is working very hard on making sure that the streetery is accessible. And the streetery is the use of the terrace, sidewalks, parking spots for retail space, or mostly for dining. Think Pinckney Street outside of Lucille Merchant, Settle Down Tavern, and Marigold Kitchen and Johnny Delmonico's. We want to make sure that is accessible as possible. And the Beyond Compliance Task Force, led by with a plum by Jason Belangi, is doing that work now. And it's so thankful for our friends Rebecca Hoyt at the City of Madison who are helping make this happen. And last but not least, we've already had one Madison Milwaukee downtown exchange, and it was on the importance of housing now more than ever since the pandemic, into the vibrancy and economic strength of downtown. That was on recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel. Our next one is going to be on July 12th. We're going to be talking about public safety in downtown. That is our DMI advocacy update. As you can see, there's a lot of things happening. If you need more information or would like to become part of any of those conversations, send us a note here at DMI, either through info@downtownmadison.org, or send me an email. We'd love to have you participate in all of the things that are happening. Now we're going to get on to the meat of our program, and our good friend, DMI board member and executive director of Porchlight, Karla Tennis, who's going to answer some questions about what's happening at Porchlight, what's happening with people experiencing homelessness, and what's happening with the shelter. Hello, Karla. How are you?
Well, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing all right. A lot of talking. Sorry, I just talked for like 10 minutes straight, but there you go. Now I'll let you talk, Karla. You having a good day today?
Having a good day. Yes, thank you.
Good. First thing we always want to make sure is people understand, what does Porchlight do? Because it's such an important organization. We want to spread the word of Porchlight. What does Porchlight do?
Wonderful. Yeah, so Porchlight is the largest provider of affordable housing and services to homeless folks here in Dane County. We've been in existence for almost 40 years. I have been with Porchlight for 32 years. So I joke with my children that it's the only grown-up job I've ever had. So that is true. We have 5 core programs in which we do all of this work. I think our best known program is probably the men's shelter, which has really been in the news and kind of a spotlight on that because of the pandemic. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Probably the largest thing that we do, I talk to people and people have no idea all of the different things that we do, like people know the men's shelter or people know Porchlight products, but they don't know all of what we do. The largest thing we do is affordable housing, right? Like, what do homeless people need? They need housing that is affordable. So we have 375 units of housing for families and singles that we own all of them. We do all of the property management, maintenance, and social work services. Most are in Madison. We have a few in Sun Prairie. We run an eviction prevention program called DIGS that helps keep families who have found housing in the community, keeping them housed, right? Because once somebody has an eviction on their record, they are not going to find other housing in our community. Safe Haven, that's a day resource center for folks who are homeless and have severe mental health issues. As you know, mental illness is one of the leading causes of homelessness locally and nationwide. And so at Safe Haven, we're able to offer crisis stabilization services, just resource connection, meals, bus tickets, all at no cost to our guests. They can come every single day. And then Porchlight Products is an employment and job training program. We train formerly homeless folks who have disabilities how to can and preserve food. We make 12 different products. We sell them in local grocery stores. We use, it helps local agriculture. We're buying our produce and our different vegetables and things that we use from local farmers. They deliver them right to our beautiful commercial kitchen on the east side. And then we also have them in local restaurants. People can purchase the items used on the menu. So it's a lot.
If you haven't had Porchlight products yet, their dilly beans are about as addicting as they come. The pancake mix is the best pancake mix around. I highly recommend it. If you want to find a way to support Porchlight, go buy their products.
Yes.
Karla, I want to ask you a question. What is the state of homelessness right now in our Madison community?
Yes. You talked a little bit, Chris talked a little bit about the pandemic and how that, has affected those who couldn't be safe at home, right? When Governor Evers gave those orders for all of us to stay at home and figure things out, Porchlight and on those of us who were here on the front lines couldn't do that because, folks, there's 250 people that we were serving nightly in the men's shelter. So what you're looking at here on the screen is what's called our point in time. So the last Wednesday in January, every January, not just locally, literally across the nation, from 10 p.m. till 2 in the morning, we have volunteers, staff, anybody who touches the lives of homeless folks are out there counting people. So this is truly what it says, a point in time. So here's the 2023 one, singles and families. It counts folks in shelter, people in transitional housing, because the definition of that is not permanent, and then folks who are out on the streets. And that's our number. So you can see some decline there, right? 2021 at the heart of the pandemic, numbers really shot up. We had lots of encampments, some sanctioned, some not, lots of people sleeping on the streets. That sleeping outside number has really had a nice decrease, and we've worked very hard as a community to do that. But we're still higher in our numbers than we were pre-pandemic. So this here this is annually. So we don't have, we're not done with 2023, so we don't have numbers of that. So this, not just looking at one singular point in time, but for the whole year, the number of folks on shelter and streets and in transitional housing. End of the year 2022, almost 3,000 people were still struggling with homelessness or temporary housing. Over the pandemic, we did a lot of hotel stays, medical respite for people with COVID and other medical issues like that. We got Dairy Drive, where we have folks in these tiny homes and tiny shelters. Like, we really did some creative looking at how we could house folks during this global pandemic. And so there's some numbers looking at that. So this slide, I think, puts in kind of a good perspective. And this looks at a singular person who is chronically homeless, which HUD has a very specific definition for that. So somebody who has been homeless 4 times in the past 3 years or 1 year straight, plus they have a disability. So when you're looking at somebody who has those severe mental health, AODA, homelessness issues, the first little column there looks at all the resources they might use, right? From psych hospitals to shelters to regular hospitals to jail, ERs, and the $40,000 it would cost to provide all of those services to one person. And then the next column talks about the more humane way, not just for the homeless person, but for us as a community and for our resources, half of that cost to house somebody with some rental supports, and then adding the wraparound services that they need to stay housed. And so the point of that is, it's obviously cheaper and more humane to house somebody with the supports that they need than having them utilize all of these different very expensive services.
Now, Karla, the question we get all the time is, what causes homelessness?
Yeah, it's certainly not one thing, right? This slide talks about some of those different things. health problems, right? The folks that we're dealing with, not just, you hear a lot about mental health and AODA issues, and that's always very real and very debilitating. But we deal with a lot of folks who have a lot of physical health issues, serious chronic health issues. Sometimes they don't have health insurance. Sometimes they don't have regular doctors. Oftentimes they're using the ER as their health care. So lots of different barriers that are keeping people kind of stuck in their situation. Domestic abuse, families, mothers, escaping abusive situations. And a better situation to them at the moment is a homeless shelter, right? And so we have an excellent domestic abuse shelter. Days does a great response here in Dane County, but they are always full. They are always full. And racial disparities, between 5 and 7 is the number of minority folks here in Dane County. They make up 52% of our homeless population. That is a huge disparity number. And Porchlight, it's not just Porchlight, right? We have such many wonderful groups and organizations and supporters and volunteers that are helping us to look at not just housing people, which is important, but looking at these root causes. Lack of affordable housing. Like when I talked about Porchlight, having our affordable housing units, we have one location on Brook Street, 100 units. It's basically an old Y. It's set up like a dorm. People have their own room, share kitchen and bath. Rent is $300. We keep it affordable. We have a 2-year waiting list. So anybody who is calling me saying, oh my gosh, my brother is homeless. Oh my gosh, my sister XYZ. It's, fill out an application and please check in every month. And one of these days I'll be like, yay, you got to the top of the list. But it is a very long waiting list. And that's not just Porchlight. It is all of us. Housing Initiatives, Tulare, and all of us who do affordable housing are hitting those impacts. And what this slide looks at is what it costs, right? And what the folks that we're dealing with, we hear a lot about, this affordable housing project going up in Dane County and this affordable housing project. It's not affordable to the folks that I serve, right? Like we need stuff at 30% of area median income. So, that's the magic number of what you want someone to pay for housing in their income. 30% of their income should go toward their housing expense. So if you're looking at a 1-bedroom in Madison, $1,300, even somebody who's a worker, $15 an hour, which is a pretty nice wage. Half of that is going toward their income. Most of the folks I deal with are on disability. Disability check is $800 a month. They can barely afford, my $350 apartments, let alone something in the city for that. And that last bullet talks about just that housing gap. That we're 13,000 units short. And then it looks at, how many units we acquired in the last 11 years. Like we've got a lot of building to do, but a lot of focusing on the real need of how low that affordability needs to be to really house our folks. And it's not just housing people, right? The folks that I deal with have a lot of barriers and they need case management and they need services and they need support. Not necessarily ongoing for everybody, right? They need interventions, crisis interventions. Maybe they need someone to talk to every few months, but many people need ongoing supports in order to stay housed.
Karla, one area that's changed significantly in the last couple of years since COVID is the shelter, right? For years, the shelter was housed in Grace Church, and Grace Church did an admirable job. But you saw during COVID that was an inadequate facility, right? Particularly during a pandemic. And we've seen a lot of change in both the temporary location for the emergency shelter, but also the permanent location. I think many people want to know more details about what's happening with both the temporary emergency location and then the permanent location as well.
Yeah, big, exciting stuff happening. Yeah, I like to say that one good thing came out of the pandemic, and that was this huge spotlight.
I hope there was more than one, but yes. Something good.
People gave us a lot of stuff. We were joking about
That's
the
good.
room that's full of hand sanitizer that I need to now go away because it's expired. But yes, the community was beyond generous. Within 2 weeks, we were out of Grace Church and into our first temporary location for the men's shelter. A huge undertaking, not just by Porchlight, but by the city. We had so many people helping, so many people bringing us this. I mean, a lot of the supplies you couldn't even get, right? Like we almost forget what we all went through a couple of years ago, right? I had little old ladies looking through their closets to try to find me gloves and sewing me masks, right? Like it was a community effort for sure. We now are at our third temporary location at Zaire Road. That is going well. It's there's a little picture there. You know, I tell people if I had a rock, I could hit Dick's. So we're quite close to the East Town Mall. But they've been great neighbors. We've been good neighbors. We've been serving. We got up to 248 people during that bitter cold spell. We're currently averaging 210, which is unheard of. At Grace Church in the summers, it would be 65 people. And a few of those things are, we got rid of our yearly limit. And back in the olden days, you could only stay at the shelter for 90 nights in the year. And so now folks could and we didn't want that to be a reason people would be outside during the pandemic, right? And so we lifted that. If you identify as a male and you need shelter, you could come every night or come when you need, right? It is still just an overnight shelter, 5 o'clock at night till 8 in the morning. We provide supper and breakfast. We have done several additional things, primarily because of the space and the staff, the additional staff that we've had since we've moved out of Grace that we just couldn't do smashed in a church basement. We have many organizations that come in and provide services on site, you know, like the Beacon. We don't feel that Porchlight has to do everything. We invite community members to come in and share their expertise and resources with our guests. And so we have a couple times a week, we have Cava Recovery who comes on site and does mental health and AODA counseling. We've been doing physical health and COVID telehealth with nurses literally since the pandemic hit. That has gone very well. Madison Street Outreach comes once a week. They have volunteer doctors who come and provide services. And we're super excited. We just started a brand new resource with the barbershop in the mall, Inspire Barbershop. They run the college and the barbershop. And so he reached out to me and, you know, unfortunately I'm used to people reaching out and complaining or can you pick up the trash around your building or whatever, right? I get it. And he reached out and said, I want to be a good neighbor and how can we partner? I do haircuts, you have people who need haircuts. And I was just like, yes, Brian, what's your idea? So he is giving us a discount. He wants to start with all the working men at the shelter, 40%. So when I said, right, we're serving 210 up to 250, 40% of our men are working. So when that's daytime hours, great. Come at 5 o'clock, we'll feed you, get a bed, do your thing. When you work second and third shift, that's an issue, right? And so we have people just call us and reserve a bed. They just have to show us their schedule. And we let them in, whether it's 2 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes they just come in for breakfast and leave. And so what we're doing is we're doing some fundraiser to raise money to get those vouchers. We have a cute little voucher made up, and Ferris, who runs our men's shelter, hands them out to the working men, and they literally just walk a block up to Brian at Inspire Barbershop, and he's giving them a haircut and shaving that beard. And, you know, it's all about feeling good about yourself and how you project yourself to the world. So we're super excited about that partnership. You know, and all of that evolves into what will be our new facility on Bartolin Drive in 2025 that will be here sooner than later, right? So my days are spent in planning meetings with the designers, with the architects, literally three Zooms a week, from programming to the design of it. And it's close, man. I think it's either end of June or end of July when they're going to be done and saying, all right, folks, here's our new shelter. So it is off of Stoughton Road, right in front of the DMV where the old sports pub was. The city just bought that McDonald's that's been closed down for a few years. And so they have that whole space, starting construction in 2024 and hoping to move in June of 2025. So it'll be 2 stories. We will continue to serve, of course, folks who identify as male. But one of the things that we learned during the pandemic with those large numbers of folks sleeping outside, we literally had our outreach workers go to Rindale Park to those 75 people who were sleeping there and say, why aren't you going into the Salvation Army? Why aren't you going to the Beacon? Why aren't you sleeping at Porchlight? And one of the top 3 reasons why they were not was they're in a couple. They are a couple. There is no place for couples to shelter, right? And they were just like, I'm not leaving my wife to go sleep at the men's shelter and to go 6 miles down the road to take her to the Salvation Army. We're not separating. So, I couldn't solve all the problems on the list, but we are going to add couples to our men's shelter in 2025. We're just super excited about all of the programming. We've got lots of office spaces and community spaces for folks to come in. Currently, one of the reasons that Grace Church was so cost effective was volunteers served all of the meals, supper and breakfast, 365 days a year. I know that Jason and DMI did that a few times. Just a wonderful way for people to connect and to help. That, of course, all had to stop because of COVID. And unfortunately, we don't have kitchen, amenities at any of our temporary locations. So our plan in 2025 is kind of a hybrid. Our goal is to be done with the catering. That was wonderful short-term, very expensive. Our goal is to have a commercial kitchen, to hire a kitchen manager, but then to hire our guests in 6 months positions to teach them how basically to work it in a restaurant, right? They'll be serving supper and breakfast to 250 people to teach them all of those skills. And then to mix that with my wonderful volunteer groups, because I still have faith communities calling me saying, when can we get back in there and serve food? Like, this is our mission, right? So we want to support that. And so we're super excited about that. And so the big thing is the funds for the actual building of the shelter, right? The bricks and mortar have all been secured through the city, through the county, federal dollars coming in. The big thing will be the operating costs. Like, that's what we as a community need to solve in the next couple of years.
This is, really, it's quite exciting. So obviously we'll talk how people potentially could help with the operating fund. You talked a lot about partnerships already you're doing at the Zaire Road site with CABA, with Madison Street Outreach. What does the relationship look like moving forward once the new shelter comes in with the daytime shelter, right? The Beacon, with Catalyst for Change, with, Friends of the State Street Family, these other organizations that are doing such great work. What do those partnerships look like moving forward once the shelter is in place?
Right. We say, come to us, all of you. You want to do connections to homeless people? We have them, right? So the other cool thing so we are designing the shelter, the new shelter, like it will be a 24-hour shelter. So it will be built with all of that in mind, right? We don't have the funds for that yet, and nor do we have necessarily ideas for that yet. But even if that's 5 years down the road, it's ready, it's built. It would just be doing the around-the-clock services and having funding for it. So yes, some of the few places that we mentioned, Catalyst for Change is a huge partner with us, as is the Beacon. Catalyst for Change is there almost every night connecting to people. They do amazing work in downtown Madison. We're going to even further extend that partnership with them by having them do the case management services once we get to the new shelter. So it won't be the warm handoff to our Porchlight staff. So Porchlight currently does the case management services. but so Catalyst will literally be a part of our budget in providing those services. The other programming they're literally just coming in. Many of them are billing Medicaid. When I talked about people doing counseling, group counseling, individual counseling, that will be paid for by them billing the Medicaid that people receive through their health insurance. And so, yes, we are super excited. We work with Friends of State Street. They do an amazing job of acquiring the things that people need. And so we work very closely with them. My only experience is the Madison area, but I think as far as working together as a community and as providers, I think we do an amazing job. We write grants together. We fulfill grants together. Like sometimes Porchlight does the affordable housing. Other people come in and do the case management. Other people come in and do a different role. I think you can't lose when we're all doing this together.
What can DMI members do to help? How can they help Porchlight with the vast amount of needs that you have? You talked about, obviously, the operating fund for the new purpose-built shelter. Are there other ways besides that, and including that, the DMI members can do to help?
Yeah, DMI has done a great job of getting the message out there, and the word out there, and the content out there. That is super important. People have an opinion about homelessness and why people are homeless. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. I often get asked about, especially downtown, people holding up signs in the medium and panhandling and all of that kind of stuff. Education, anytime we can get the word out there, that is super important. So things like this, where people are hearing directly about what's happening here. And I do this, I'm always speaking in churches and businesses and different groups, and with United Way, I'm more than happy to speak to different groups. There's volunteer. Porchlight is a very volunteer intensive organization. And, we had tons of volunteer stuff pre-pandemic. We were doing stuff during the pandemic, and, that's even expanded more. A lot of it's with our affordable housing, landscaping, painting. We had people making shelves last week, whatever. There's always a need, and someone always has a skill for something, right? And sometimes it's just, gathering personal hygiene items at the shelter, because we go through 250 of them every single night. So, we list stuff on our website, but people can certainly reach out, or if they have a fundraiser idea that they want to do for us, that's wonderful. We love partnering with that kind of stuff too.
The website has a great resources. It's porchlightinc.org, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I was like, wait, I think there's an ink on there. So porchlightinc.org. Support our friends at Porchlight. They're doing incredible work to make sure that everyone in our community has the resources they need to succeed. We are so thankful to have Karla Tennis in our Madison community, helping out everybody she can. Karla, thank you for all the work that you do and your entire team. I know this is a team effort of everyone at Porchlight. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for being with us here today at our advocacy update.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you as well to our great friends and major series supporters, the Scenario Company, and also our friends at Hush Blackwell and Fury Companies for supporting our advocacy update series. Hope we'll see you at a DMI event soon, or downtown sometime this summer. There is a lot happening, so please come on downtown. We'll see you soon. Have a great day. Thanks for your support. Talk to you soon.